You're listening to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. It's fast, fun, free, daily deep dive Bible, and right now we're working on the book of Nehemiah. If you're new, welcome. You can jump in right here, or you can always go back and start at the beginning of any season. The whole podcast is available in an easy-to-use format at thetmbh.com.
I'm not going to embarrass my kid here because I love him. I mean, I love him. He delights me. My son is one of the happiest things that I can possibly imagine happening to anybody, let alone me. Also, there's this one particular around the house, simple little responsibilities mistake that he keeps making right now. I mean, it kind of matters. It's the sort of thing where it's like, hey, dude, I'm trying to teach you man of the house stuff. I need you to do this thing and do it steadily. And usually gets it right. But when he doesn't get it right, it's sort of consequential. It kind of matters if he forgets to do the thing. When he gets home tonight, we're going to have another conversation about the thing. And he's going to be so sad that he forgot to do what he was supposed to do. He doesn't want to screw stuff up. He doesn't want to make mistakes. It'll be a worthwhile, meaningful, edifying conversation. But definitely part of the conversation is going to be, hey, dude, we've had this conversation more than once, man. And every time you look me in the eye and with sincerity that I believe, because I know you mean it, you say, I understand, Dad. It won't happen again. I'm really sorry. But you keep forgetting this thing, and I need you not to forget. Maybe that's the kind of thing that we're getting throughout the whole story of the Old Testament. That would be the benefit of the doubt view of the main human characters, the main family that we follow throughout the entire Old Testament, the descendants of Abraham. There's no two ways about it. It's not a great look. It's a tough run. Now, in defense, if you point a camera at anybody for 1,800 years, you're going to catch their family doing some real stupid stuff from time to time. If you point a camera at me, not for 1,800 years, but for 18 years, I just shudder to imagine what it would be like if there had been a camera pointed at me for the last 18 years. We do stupid stuff. We do embarrassing stuff. We ebb and flow. We get things right. We get things wrong. And much like my son, sometimes we forget and it's innocent. And also, much like my son and me and everybody I know, sometimes we just want to do something selfish because we're people and we make mistakes. It's interesting, though, that in the same way that in my relationship with my son, we've got this rhythm where from time to time we have really serious talks about very big things. So we see those kind of conversations, those kind of moments between God and his chosen people throughout the Old Testament. For the last week, we've been looking at these great moments, these great conversations between the whole assembly, whichever descendants of Abraham happened to be alive at that moment in the Bible, the whole assembly of them and God, usually mediated by some kind of leader or prophet or priest or somebody who's prominent in that role at that time. And one of the things that you're probably noticing as we've been working backwards through these assemblies, what we see as we look back through all of these things are these pivotal moments where people in the moment, I think, really mean what they're saying. Yes, Dad, we get it. Yeah, it hasn't always been perfect, but you're right. It only makes sense to do the right thing and to dedicate ourselves to you and to commit to that. We're going to do it. I think they mean it in the moment. But you only have to turn a couple of pages after each of these stories, and the wheels come off again. The best of intentions don't get it done. And there's a point to all of this that I guess we'll talk about at the end of our conversation today after we look at the last of these great assemblies of the descendants of Abraham that I think we need to note. So Exodus 19, you know what Exodus is about. It's right there in the name, Doug. This is the story of exodizing. The people of Israel, they moved to Egypt because Joseph got pushed into a pit by his brothers, and then he did really well in Egypt, and he became prominent there, and then there was a famine in the land. This is all the end of the book of Genesis. And then the brothers come back, and they have a reconciliation, kind of like Jacob and Esau had a reconciliation, and they all end up living in Egypt, and stuff goes great, but then generations pass, and the leaders of Egypt forget about Joseph and his awesomeness, and the Hebrews, they become slaves. And it's not cool. It's bad slavery. It's going on here. God raises up a leader, Moses, and through a whole bunch of miraculous plagues and signs and wonders, finally Pharaoh is broken. He lets the people go. Then he changes his mind and goes to kill him. Early on in the book of Exodus, he's going to kill 1 million people walking across the desert, these released slaves. And this caravan of migrating Hebrews comes up against the Red Sea or the Reed Sea, and Pharaoh's chasing them down with his chariots. And then God does amazing things including parting the sea and letting them walk through on dry land and then crashing the water back in on Pharaoh's army to free his people and make it so that they know this was definitely God who did this. We are not just another people who invented a religion and made a god out of stone or wood to feel better about things and to make sense of the created order. No. This one's different. Everybody does that, but this is different. This is the actual God who did the actual stuff. So after this great escape and all of these miracles, now we're getting to the point where, kind of like what Nehemiah is going through, things get a little harder. Okay, we're out of the fire. We're out of the really difficult part, but now how do we become a people? How do we lead? What do we do? How do we treat each other? What makes us different? What do you do if you're a community of people, if the reason you continue to exist as a community of people is because the sea parted and you walked through and then it crashed in on your enemies, and also there's like pillars of fire and stuff? That has to have implications, right? Well, what does it look like? And the second half of Exodus deals with a lot of that formation of the people kind of stuff, the same task that Ezra and Nehemiah are taking on in their books. So in Exodus 19, we are 3 months removed from the initial departure from Egypt. The Hebrews are wandering around in the desert out here, the Sinai Peninsula somewhere. And then this is what it says. Exodus 19:1. In the 3rd month, after the Israelites left Egypt, on the very day they came to the desert of Sinai, after they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. And then from here, we get several pages worth of God revealing the law. The 10 Commandments is the very next chapter. That's chapter 20. And then over the next few chapters, a bunch more of these specific laws get revealed. And then in chapter 24, we get a sort of ratification ceremony of that covenant to lock in all of the things that God said and to lock in the Israelites' answer to say, yeah, we're going to do that for sure. And there's some sacrificial stuff that happens there to lock that in as well. So more or less, this is the first giving of the law, or a lot of the first giving of the law. And this is the first agreement to God's terms of the law or of the covenant. And then, as we talked about yesterday, Deuteronomy, or the second law giving, is the reiteration of all of this with the same leader, Moses, but with a new, younger generation of people who are going to be the ones to go and take the land. And those are the people who are starting to get a little bit older in the next meeting, which is in Joshua 24 that we've talked about as well. Does that all make sense? Okay, that's all the great big assemblies that we need to look at. But if we go back and we look at even just this first one and see how it sets a pattern for all the rest, we keep coming back to the idea that I think, much like my son means it every time he says, "Dad, I'm going to remember to do that thing around the house." He means it. He's just still learning. He's making honest mistakes. He meant it when he said it, but then he forgot, and the franticness of the world caught up with him, and he made a mistake. In the same way, I think honest mistakes got made right after that assembly in the book of Exodus. And later those mistakes metastasized into less honest mistakes. But it was quick, my friends. They said, "We're going to do this. Absolutely. We are completely in." Well, you know the story. Moses comes back down with the 10 Commandments, and they've melted down all the gold that God gave them from the Egyptians. They've turned it into a calf. They're worshiping it. What are you doing? I was just up there for like a couple of minutes getting the details of the deal from God. Y'all just said you were going to do it. Why did you melt all your gold and make a cow? What the heck, guys? It's that quick. It'd be really easy to be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, Jews of the Bible, man, as a people, they really had problems. Come on, every one of our people groups would look stupid over 1,800 years. Every one of us would look stupid if this was a story about our people group under the same circumstances, because this is reflective not of how any specific group of people are. This is reflective of the human heart. And what's happening with all of these big assemblies that we've been talking about is we're seeing a pattern to the Old Testament. And the pattern is God reminds everybody of awesome things that he did. And it's like, we're going to do a covenant here. And remember the covenant? You're going to follow my law. I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. And the people all come together and they're like, yes, that is what we've got to do. And then they almost immediately not do that again for an extended period of time. And then circumstances bring them to their knees and they come back and they're like, big assembly. It is time under this new leader and with this new generation of better, hipper, cooler, more moral, younger Hebrews to redo that covenant. We are going to get it right this time. We are in. Absolutely, we're going to do that. And then they don't. Wash, rinse, repeat. This is kind of how the Old Testament is organized. So as we get to the very, very end of the narrative part of the Old Testament here in Nehemiah, it looks like we're doing one last time into the breach, one final rodeo here, one last dance with marriage. That doesn't work as well, but I do like Tom Petty. What's happening is we're trying it one last time. What if we really mean it this time? Maybe we've seen 1,800 years of miracles and the work of God and his persistence, and now we've got all the prophets and all of this stuff and all these experiences. Maybe now, finally, we could mean it when we say, bring out the book of the law and read it to us, Ezra. Explain it to us with words that we can understand. We're gonna muster our very best remembering and our very best character, and we are going to do what none of our ancestors were able to sustain. That is, we are going to live in covenant with God. And if you understand the urgency of this one last try, then you kind of understand what looks like pretty fervent religious fundamentalism that is all about continuing to strive in that effort at the time that Jesus shows up. These assemblies that we've looked at throughout the Old Testament, they're very important, but none of them seem to yield transformational, culture-wide, sustainable change. None of them seem to bring about a transformation of the heart of the people that sticks for the long term. And I don't think that's some kind of unique negative reflection on the family of Abraham. I think we're supposed to read that no matter who we are and be like, yeah, I see myself in that. That's me. That pattern kind of sounds like my life. That pattern kind of sounds like the people I know and just how the world is. And that pattern, frankly, begs for some kind of solution from God that is greater than simply willpower alone on our part. And that's really kind of how the Old Testament tees up the whole Jesus thing. And finally, a reminder on the way out the door here. This weekend, May 18th, 2024, my buddy Jeff Foote, who does the music and the editing on this podcast, is hosting a Neil Morse concert at his church, Grace Church in Longmont, Colorado. If you happen to be in the neighborhood and you want to hear cool music and you want to hang out with Jeff, you could do that. He didn't ask me to tell you, but I just wanted you to know because I thought you might think it was a pretty cool thing. So again, this weekend, May 18th, 7:30 p.m. at Grace Church in Longmont, Colorado for that Neil Morse show. All right, that's it for now. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.